Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, folks. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am here with another series of first one. However, this is a series of what I would not buy from Sephora, attached with what I would purchase instead, along with what I plan to purchase myself. Every time Sephora has a new launch or Sephora drops something new, I'll probably come out with one of these videos to say whether or not I will actually be purchasing anything from that line in order to do a first try review on such said products. So let's get started with my first series of what I would not buy from Sephora, what I would purchase instead, as well as what I actually do plan on purchasing in the near future. Does that mean I will go out and purchase everything at once right now? No. No, not yet. When I do have the money, I will do that because I know how to budget for that. However, at this point in time, this current point in time, what I plan on doing is continue to purchase each item in singles until I bulk up in the way that I have been purchasing for the last 2 years. That's what I will continue to do until that time does arrive. Okay? So let's get right into it. If you see me looking down, I have my list piled here. There's more. Don't judge that. Don't judge that. There's more. There's more. That's just the first 3 items that you can see. There's absolutely more products coming in other than 3. I spent about an hour last night piling the products together so that I would have a full video for you. So don't judge what you just saw. All right. Anyway, let's get right into it. Let's get started talking about the products that I do not plan to purchase. And these are mainly in the eyeshadow palette area. And I will tell you why I will not be planning on purchasing such products. So let's go ahead and let's get started into speaking on such topics. So the first palette that I would not be purchasing at this time from Sephora or ever is the One Size Fits All by Patrick Starr. Here's why. It actually reminds me of the Gwen Stefani palette. The same shades, same layout. Looking at the pigments are the actual exact same. The exact same as the Gwen Stefani palette. For me, I purchased the Gwen Stefani palette when it dropped. However, y'all see the punchiness of the eyeshadows from the palette that I just used earlier? There is not that much punchiness at all. For me, the Gwen Stefani palette was literally all crease shades. All crease shades. There was absolutely nothing that I could do with the Gwen Stefani palette in order to create a look, and I do believe the One Size Fits All palette by Patrick Starr is of the same element for my skin tone. I don't know about you, but for my skin tone, the One Size Fits All palette from Patrick Starr is just not it for me. It is just not it. So I'm just not going to be purchasing that palette at any point in time soon or ever. The Morphe 35 Up Until Dawn Artistry palette. Any shadows that I mentioned Any palette that I mention after this that has to do with Morphe, it will be for the same exact reasons as to why I will not be purchasing these very specific Morphe palettes. Is the exact same reasons. So don't look at me to be repeating myself consistently as to why I will not be purchasing these Morphe palettes when I mention them. But starting from this one, it's the very same reason I'm just mentioning them, because they are online for purchase, not for sale, but for purchase on the Sephora website, and I am just not going to spend my money due to the fact that I've already experienced the Morphe 35O palette and another one that I will be mentioning, and to me it just wasn't worth the money at all, except for a couple that I might end up mentioning later on as to what you should buy from Morphe instead. So the Morphe 35 Up Until Dawn Artistry Palette. The shadows look very dry in the pan. If the shadows are looking very, very dry, more than likely they probably are very dry. Trust your eyesight when looking at a eyeshadow palette. Trust it. It is more likely that, yes, not enough shea butter was placed in, or no shea butter at all was placed in the palette in order to give it that moisture or that pigmentation that it should have when the mica is put in to the shea butter in order to make it blendable on the eyes. So if it's looking very dry, it's probably because it's lacking in raw shea butter that is used as an ingredient in order to build up the eyeshadow to make it look as punchy as it does with this one. The 35O Natural Flirt Artistry Palette, same thing, will not be purchasing it due to the fact, for the same reasons. The Fenty Beauty by Rihanna Snap Shadow Mix and Match Eyeshadow Palette. The shades look very muddy. I mean, they look like it rained on the shade. You walked in the rain and you're supposed to take a eyeshadow brush on the bottom of your shoes and put that on your eyelid and make it look as though you actually did your makeup. No, ma'am, no. Absolutely not. That is exactly what that eyeshadow palette looks like to me. And that's the Fenty Beauty by Rihanna Snap Shadow Mix and Match Eyeshadow Palette. It looks like it rained, you walked in mud, and they expect me to take my eyeshadow brush, put it on the bottom of my shoe, and put that in my eye. I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm very specific. The reason why my eyeshadow palette collection is so small as it is I am very, very specific as to the pigmentation that I like on my eyes, and usually the eyeshadow palettes that I tend to use are usually anywhere in between the price of what, $60 to almost $200 range in order for it to work on my eyes from Sephora alone. That's usually what gets my eyes looking the way they do when I do my eyeshadow. An eyeshadow palette with a price tag of $60 to $200. And I do have to budget for these eyeshadow palettes, so my eyeshadow palette collection tends to be much, much, much smaller than what you all really truly do think, because I'm very, very specific as to the kind of eyeshadows that I want placed on my eyes. It must be blendable, it must be real quick, as I only use ever 3 brushes 3. Sometimes without even washing them, I can get a different eye look using the same brushes every single day from using it the day before, and it doesn't affect the shadow at all. The most and least expensive thing that I should be using in being able to apply my eyeshadows are the eyeshadow brushes themselves. The actual eyeshadow. It should not be costing me anywhere from no less than $25 to apply my eyeshadow with a brush. It is all in the application of the actual eyeshadows themselves, and technically the brush is literally the weakest link in applying your eyeshadow. When it comes to a eyeshadow brush, for me, the eyeshadow brush is the weakest link. The eyeshadows usually should be the strongest point of contact, as they last much longer on your body than using the actual eyeshadow brush in order to make the placement. That's the truth. The next eyeshadow palette that I will not be purchasing from Sephora, as I've actually already purchased this palette and it is the same experience. Dry crease shadows only for my skin tone. No pigmentation whatsoever. It seems like there is absolutely no shea butter inside these eyeshadows in order to lay them on your eyes. Is once again the Tarte Amazonian Clay Matte Eyeshadow Palette. As I've said, purchased already. Shades don't even pick up on a brush. No swatching visibility. Powders, very drying on the eyelids. As a matter of fact, you can't even use either concealer or anything. The Amazonian palette from Tarte actually picks up better without a base. That's what I found. They actually pick up much better without a base. And usually it's actually better to work with a small amount of concealer base or a eyeshadow base to pick up the shades in order to help the look glow up on your eyes and make your eyes look very strong. Very, very strong. So with the Tarte palette, it's actually much better to not use a eyeshadow base, as it will make your eyes look very, very, very dry. Very dry, very patchy. Eyeshadows will break apart. So with that experience, I'm not going to be purchasing that one again. The Morphe 35O palette, as you have all heard in the last one, same reasonings. I already purchased already had the experience that I had. Same thing as the Tarte palette. Shades don't pick up. Better to use without a base. All that jazz when it comes to that palette from Morphe. So, and technically, they are best made. The Morphe 35O palette is best made to be used to fill in your brows. Truthfully, I've used it to fill in my brows, and it's one of the best options to make your brows look put together quite easily. And that is pretty much it for what I would not be purchasing from Sephora. Give me a minute to find what I would purchase. Not even a minute, 30 seconds. What I would recommend instead from Sephora. The Morphe M2 Ready in 5 eyeshadow palette. Why? The pigmentation is there. The swatch is there. It's not patchy. It's a very good eyeshadow palette. And Ready in 5, meaning you can do your eyeshadow in 5 minutes with one eyeshadow, and it's pretty good. That is an eyeshadow palette from what I've heard, is that it's actually a pretty good eyeshadow palette. The next recommendation is the Morphe 35T Sweetest Tea Artistry palette. Very punchy, very colorful. You can get a lot done with that palette. You can absolutely get a lot done with the Morphe 35T Sweetest Tea Artistry palette. You can get a lot done with that palette. And I would definitely recommend that one. With Morphe, what I find is that their color shadows are more pigmented because you do have to use a lot of shea butter in order to get the color to pop like that, even in the pan itself. In order to be sellable, I do find that you have to place more shea butter in order for the mixture to be able to blend on your eyes properly. So I guess they do spend their money more in the colorful aspect of eyeshadows instead of the natural realm. That's what I'm finding with Morphe. And I don't know, but I kind of want all my eyeshadows to be seamless. Even though I do recommend those two palettes from Morphe and another one coming up, I kind of want all my eyeshadows to be mixed with the same amount of shea butter in order to give it a nice blendability aspect and make my eyes look really, really nice, bright, wide awake, as if I slept even when I did not sleep, because that's what an eyeshadow is supposed to do when you have not slept for half your life, for about 14 years since you had your first child. You have not slept 14 years since you've had your first child. An eyeshadow should make it look as though you've slept even when you haven't slept since 14 years of being a mother. Technically 15, as 9 months you carried the child, and your lack of sleep started while the child is in the womb. So from that experience alone, that's what an eyeshadow is supposed to do, is to make sure that it looks like you've had a full night's of guaranteed sleep, even though you have not had that full night's sleep. The next recommendation that I would give to you is the Pat McGrath Labs Mothership X eyeshadow palette in Moonlit Seduction. I haven't bought that palette yet. Like I said, $200. Pat McGrath, anywhere from $200 to $500. I have to budget as though I'm not planning on going anywhere for the next year in order to purchase the Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette. If I purchase that palette, or any eyeshadow palette from either Natasha Denona or Pat McGrath, I have to make sure that there is no family trips coming up. There is actually no vacations coming up. There is absolutely nothing that I am doing that is going to affect my purchasing that kind of palette at all, because of the fact that it is so expensive. And by gosh, those eyeshadows better be worth it for that price tag, because if that eyeshadow palette is not worth it for a $500 price tag, I need a word with Pat McGrath myself, and I also need a word with Natasha Denona. What's up? It better be good at $500 in Sephora. I'm gonna need a word with you by the time I do purchase my own recommendations as to why the palette is not as good as it is for $500. Because some of these things, like an eyeshadow palette, you cannot return to Sephora once you've used it. You cannot. As of this COVID season, I do believe that returns are inevitably non existent in the beauty industry due to germs. So if an eyeshadow palette is going to cost me anywhere from $200 to $500, it better be worth it. It better be worth it. Pat McGrath and Natasha Denona. Those eyeshadow palettes better have raw shea butter that sticks to your eye like it does to a baby's bottom or my face when I do my skincare. Because I've used drugstore palettes that do that have only costed me $13. And by the way, drugstore palette recommendations are coming up. The next palette, after that long-winded spiel, that I would recommend, even with the price tag, is the Natasha Denona Sunset Eyeshadow Palette. Once again, from what I've heard, and when I do purchase the palette, I will be receiving it with my own money. And once again, I better not be planning on going on no vacation when I do purchase that palette. I better not be going on no vacation, nowhere, anytime soon in order to purchase that palette. So that's 2 palettes, no vacations for 2 years in a row. No vacation. Absolutely not one vacation for 2 years straight with those 2 palettes. I do plan to get those palettes. However, that's what I'm recommending right now. Just based off of what I've heard and being able to swatch in Sephora a couple of the shadows to be able to get a feel of the shadow to see if at some point I do want to spend my money on such expensive eyeshadow palettes. So we'll see about it, and I'll let you know when I do purchase it myself. The next palette that I do recommend, and it's on the more available side, is the Dior Backstage eyeshadow palette. That palette's about, what, $60? That's affordable for me. $60 is affordable. Even though that's kind of pushing it. That's kind of pushing it. $60 is affordable when it comes to an eyeshadow palette. I would definitely recommend that one. Dior shadows, some of their shadows have been known to be very, very dry, apparently. However, that's up to some people and their opinion. For me, I think a Dior shadow is well worth it at $60. As a matter of fact, I think a Dior shadow should be more expensive than what it is. However, due to the fact that they have made it so available at that price of $60, it's well worth it. It's absolutely well worth it. The last eyeshadow palette that I will be recommending instead of the other 5 from Morphe is the Morphe 9 and Vintage Rose Artistry Palette. Once again, color, pigmentation, raw shea butter usage. There needs to be more blendability, and I do see that in all Morphe shadows when it comes to shadows that are very, very pigmented. If you have the Plum palette from Morphe and you notice that it's very, very pigmented, it's probably why, because of the raw shea butter that is used in order to get that punchiness in the color, as the several shadows that are very, very hard to pick up on are plums, greens, reds, and oranges and yellow. Plums, greens, reds, orange, and yellow. Those eyeshadows are very, very pigmented. In order to get a yellow color or a golden color to pick up, it must have an attachment to a raw shea butter that gives it that pigmentation. So, in order to get that pigmentation, the raw shea butter has to be really nice, thick, and emollient, and the mica must be able to adhere to that raw shea butter in order to make it look nice and punchy on the eyes. So, with that being said, those are the recommendations that I do have for the eyeshadow palettes instead of the ones that I would not be purchasing. Now, let's get into what I am going to be purchasing, and as I said, little by little, and not all at once, little by little. So, with this, I went on the Sephora app and I got some help after watching Tati Westbrook's channel. And I mean, the experience that I had with the Sephora help, let's just say I would have been able to pick out an entire face full of makeup standing in the store and pay for it by the time they were done, after going through about almost 2 to 3 helpers and being booted out for asking too many questions. Anywho, these are the recommendations that came before I was booted out twice. So, for foundation, the Dior Forever Skin Glow Foundation with built-in SPF of 15. For concealer, I'll have everything placed up on the screen, either here or here. Don't remember which side I'll put it on, but everything will be there. The Dior Backstage Concealer, the Urban Decay All Nighter Face Primer, the Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place Foundation. At the time that I went for and they recommended the Dior foundation, it said not available, so the product has been sold out. So the next recommendation that came up is the Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation. So that's another one that I will be checking in and purchasing to test out for myself. The Hourglass Translucent Setting Powder, which is apparently talc free. For another concealer is the Kosas Revealer Super Creamy and Brightening Concealer. So I was recommended two concealers. The Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Pressed Setting Powder. I was also recommended the Rare Beauty by Selena Gomez Positive Light Liquid Luminize Highlighter. Be careful with this highlighter. There are several shades to this highlighter, so be very, very careful. They show the very light pink one, which I can use on my skin tone. However, it will not, well, it might shine, but it won't pick up as well. So I would go for a much darker version of the highlighter in order to get that pigmentation that I'm looking for that blinded by the sun highlighter. I would pick up a much darker shade for myself. For those of you on the lighter side of this spectrum, I would recommend that shade. I would recommend the pink shade. I think that would be good for those of you on the lighter side. The next is the NARS Blush Orgasm X was recommended. What else was recommended? The Haws Labs by Lady Gaga Power Sculpt Velvet Bronzer with fermented arnica. My question is, what the fuck is fermented arnica? Somebody please explain that down there to me. What the fuck is fermented arnica? I don't know what that issue is. And before I purchase something with fermented arnica, I want to know what fermented arnica is before I put that ish on my face, because once again, it could just be mud being given a fancy name such as fermented arnica. It could just be mud from the ground after it rains. Just saying. Just saying. From Sephora itself, the Sephora favorites, the mini mascara lash stash to go set with a redeemable voucher. However, in order to use the redeemable voucher, the mascara must not be opened. So the other question I have is, how you gonna know if you like the mascara without trying it and then not be able to return it thanks to COVID? Because now that COVID is here, you can't, once again, you can't really return anything such as mascara, especially if you have had pink eye. You cannot return a eyeshadow palette or mascara if you have had pink eye. Be careful. Yes, I have sold an eyeshadow palette. However, I've only used it one time and I did not have pink eye. Have I gotten pink eye? Yes. Am I prone to getting pink eye? Yes, I am. However, did I have pink eye when I sold that palette? And it was a cheap palette that I sold, not an eyeshadow palette. A cheap palette. I don't believe in reselling eyeshadow palettes. I don't believe in the resale of eyeshadow. You just don't know if the person is susceptible to pink eye. I am. I get pink eye a lot. I do. And I usually get my pink eye in spring. I don't know how I've avoided pink eye for 2 years thus far. But I usually get my pink eye in spring, and it usually lasts me about 2 weeks before the pink eye goes away. So I don't share eyeshadow palettes knowing that I have something such as pink eye that can be transferred to another person. So to those of you that are asking to be a user in my eyeshadow palettes, I can't do that. Your health is at risk if I were to share my eyeshadow palettes with you due to the fact that I carry pink eye. And I do get pink eye a lot. I cannot share my shadows, and I can no longer, thanks to COVID, share my palettes or any of my beauty stuff. And that's what I'm saying no to. No to sharing my makeup, no to sharing my makeup brushes, due to the fact that COVID taught me a lesson in sharing and skin-to-skin contact. Germs. I will not be doing that, and I will not be taking chances in getting sued by someone for having an eyeshadow palette that they want to use because a girl named Beyonce used it and touched it and bought it. I'm sorry, I can't do that. The last recommendation that I was given is a lipstick, the Givenchy Pink Collection Le Rouge Sheer Velvet Matte Lipstick. Y'all know I don't wear pink. Y'all know I wear something else other than pink. However, I will get the Givenchy lipstick, however, hopefully in another color and another shade other than pink. Because I've already tried wearing pink. Pink does not fit my lips. Pink does not fit my lips. What fits my lips is red, burgundy, burgundy, and nude colors. Those shades fit my lips. But pink does not fit my lips. So I was recommended once again the pink shade from Givenchy. However, due to the fact that I know that pink does not work on my lips, I will be purchasing a shade that does work for me. With that being said, that is everything that I have for this video today. In my first ever what I would not buy from Sephora, what I would recommend instead, and what I do plan to purchase from Sephora. Thank you all so much for watching, and I do hope that this video does help you in knowing what I have in my collection, why I am not sharing my collection, and how it would help you to feel a part of Beyonce's collection by purchasing it for yourself in order to get your makeup done just like Beyonce, all due to what was mentioned before. Thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe to this channel for future videos, and I will see you all in the next one. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.